Welcome to HagueTalks, the podcast, where we hear directly from some of the HagueTalks community about how they're setting peace and justice in motion.
My name is Cindy Morales. I'm a journalist from Colombia. I'm working for Colombia Más 20. It's a journalist project for El Spectador. El Spectador is the oldest and one of the most important newspaper in Colombia. And we focus on the implementation of peace agreement between government and guerrilla de las FARC, signed in 2016.
Cindy is a Colombian journalist. She covered the conflict between paramilitary and state groups and guerrilla fighters that stretched for more than 50 years, since 1958. Over 200,000 people have died and more than 5 million civilians were displaced in Colombia. Now, Cindy is specialised in reporting about the efforts to seek accountability and justice. The big one is the peace agreement, signed in 2016 between the Colombian government and the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, the FARC. I'm Janet Anderson, and I was so pleased to meet Cindy here in The Hague during Hague Justice Week in June 2023. She was visiting some of the key places for accountability, like the International Criminal Court. But before delving deeper into justice efforts in Colombia, I asked Cindy about her own background, what it means to be a journalist in her home country. And we kicked off with a fundamental question. What's your favourite colour?
Yellow.
Why?
Because it's vibrant, it's not boring.
Where did you grow up in Colombia? What kind of place did you grow up in?
I was born in Bogota, it's the capital. My grandmother was cooking madam at the fancy hotel, and my grandfather was builder construction, and we have a lot of needs in my house. I went a scholarship to get into the university. In fact, I was the first person in my family to go to university. So now maybe I'm privileged, but I need to work very hard for that. And of course, my sister. I'm very grateful for my parents because they effort so hard for that. And now I'm doing what I love to do, to expose the truth and tell the stories of the normal people.
You've said for journalism that it's always been something you're interested in. In terms of justice, was there something that happened in your life or in your family or in your environment that made you really want to focus on justice as the major part of your reporting work?
Not in my family or my inner circle, but, well, I'm from Colombia. It's a country that it's very complex. I grew up facing all this threat like drug cartels, and of course the guerrillas. We are growing up seeing very dramatic scenes on televisions, like murder, bombs, attempts, etc. So when I became a journalist, I say, I just want to cover that. Of course, the approach in that time was very a war journalist. And now we have a different approach about peace building construction journalists. So we changed that because this time it's changing too.
What does it mean to be a journalist in Colombia? How is it? Is it to be automatically a member of the opposition? Is it automatically difficult? Is it automatically sort of a symbol of truth? I mean, how is it to be a journalist?
All of this, I think. I want to be a journalist since I was a child. So I always love my job. And of course, we're facing different challenges, like be murdered. And of course, another things like misinformation or disinformation. For me, it results difficult because people don't trust in media, at least at the agreement of government and guerrilla. So try to cover this news is so difficult. because we are always on the focus of the opposition's politic. But I think the journalists general in Colombia, we do a honest work, and maybe some part of the public recognize that.
Something that showed you how difficult it is to work as a journalist? Maybe there's a particular journalist who was targeted or a particular event that happened?
Well, in the top of the person that is murdered in Colombia, the human rights defender is the one. But after that, maybe the environment defenders and journalists. And what is that? Because we have to face different enemies like the state, the cartels, the armed groups, etc. So one of the most important cases is from a journalist, a woman journalist. The name is Ginette Bedoya. She was abused, victim of rape from paramilitary group in complicity with a state government. And the story, she got an interview for a paramilitary in the jail. She go to the jail, and in the jail, with collaboration with the authorities kidnapped and raped and abandoned him in other region. She survived. But this happened 25 years ago. And 25 years ago, there is no justice for that case. And she is the face of violence against women, and especially journalist women in Colombia. Because at the beginning, all they say, she's a liar, it's not true. And he needs to prove all this time that it's true. So maybe it's a case that it's an example for that is what is facing, especially a women journalist in Colombia.
And is there something that you can point to in your work that's made you feel particularly like, yes, I really am pleased that I have done this work, and I know that this has made a difference or helped somebody, or just, felt that you've written a good story?
Our approach in my job are different because we not just tell the official story. Of course, we are interviewed to the authorities, but we always has a contact with the victims and the community, local regions. So we have a project that is very successful. We present that at the United Nations last March. And we choose different women leaderships in different regions. And they do different proposals about different subjects, problems of his regions. And they work with a journalist of my team, and we both write the story. She has the question, she chooses the photo, she participated in the editions, and we call this project Women Rights Story. And of course, the story, it was about women's too. So it was the first time that they say, I can read the newspaper and I can see me in that newspaper. It's my story that is not maybe manipulated. And I love this project. We hope to do this for the second phase.
And this peace agreement, obviously, it's the most important thing that's happened in Colombia. And there was the vote against it and then the revotes. And since then, it's had this consequence of all kinds of institutions have been set up, not only courts, but also truth commissions and spaces for victims to talk. I mean, it's from the outside, it is incredibly complicated to try to understand. How is it from inside?
Incredibly complicated too, because the agreement has 5 points. One of the most important for me is justice. Yesterday, I asked two persons to the Kosovo court, was the reparation to the victims, and they saying us only economic reparations. And I think that it was sad because in Colombia, we of course have a reparation about money for victims, but we are going beyond.
Cindy explains that as part of the Colombia peace agreement, one of the fundamentals is that perpetrators can admit what they did, tell the truth, and ask for forgiveness, while acknowledging that the state itself had failed on its side, and to make it clear that they're committed to the principle of no repetition. The perpetrators also have to rebuild communities in practical terms, building schools, streets, also symbolic signs of forgiveness for the victims. And victims have often stressed that monetary compensation is not their main priority.
For the most of them, he needs the truth. What happened with my husband? What happened with my son? What happened in this murder? And of course, that is saying me that I'm not crazy, that it happened to me because the state denied so many times something happened.
So it's the alleged perpetrators who then admit that they're the perpetrators and then tell exactly what happened.
They have to do it because if the peace tribunal prove that you don't say all the truth, you can get out to the tribunals. You lose your benefits. So when you go to the hearings, to the audience, and you listen all the executor that he was saying, it's so hard.
Why is it so hard? Because the level of detail and
Yes.
the pain that people have feeling?
The victims is over there. I was in 2 hearings, maybe. One of them in Spanish is falsos positivos.
The false positives.
Yes, the
Extrajudicial executions that happen by state-backed forces.
Yeah.
And that they tried to pretend essentially were done by the other side.
So there are so many stories that people it's just walking in the street and the military catch it up and they murder it. And they appear in another region and another city with another man, with another names. And after 5 or 10 years, they say the mother, yes, I murdered your son. With this level of details that it's so painful. But it's a relief for these victims. And I think it's a different vision about justice. It's not the ordinary justice that you put in the jail the person. It's more restorative justice vision. And I think this is the most important point in this agreement.
It sounds like there's a lot that you're focused on in your work on process at the moment. I'm obviously understanding exactly what the victims are asking for and what the nature of justice is, but you're focused a lot on that kind of detail. Do you think that you will get to the stage, or maybe in your mind you've got to the stage of thinking about what the bigger meaning of all of this is in Colombia? What I'm wondering is, does it help Colombia to move on? Does it help Colombia to restore, as you call it, restorative justice? Does it help Colombia to repair, reparative justice? Is it going to work?
Yes, because I have the feeling that we need to heal in the nations. Because the principal challenge for us as a citizens, it's trust in others. I think, well, we are working all this day for the HAGUE, and all the people is respectful for the other. But I think that we are not, and maybe because we don't trust in the other. So these hearings, this audience, this kind of vision of justice, and plus that, the True Commission that say something that we are knowing that it happened, finally prove that it happens, help us to healing as a country. And of course, we need more time, and it's a slow process. But I think it's a good process. Maybe for the next generation, maybe we are now seeing the results very soon. But I think that for the next generation, we can finally have a country that is facing his harms. And I think it's very positive for Colombia.
I also asked Cindy how The Hague struck her, and she thinks maybe there's some mutual learning to be done. I know you've only been in The Hague a short while, but I'm wondering if there's anything that struck you while you were being here that makes you think, oh yeah, that's what The Hague is, that's what The Hague does, that's interesting.
I think it's a city very organized, maybe too much for me. I need to be a very calm city. But I think we can learn this respectful for others and maybe have a different approach about justice. And maybe you can learn, of course, from us. I think it's if you get this approach, restorative justice, it's better to have another vision of what is the needs of victims.
Thanks, Cindy Morales, for shedding light on the efforts made by journalists in Colombia to work towards truth and justice, and for bringing her focus on restorative justice here in The Hague. Check out all the podcasts for Hague Talks. This first collection is around Hague Justice Week, with some of the great people setting peace and justice in motion. And don't forget to like and share Hague Talks, the podcast.